Hello everybody, my name is Marco and I'm the founder of Lit Systems, and I also do most of the product and user experience design on this project. First, I want to thank you for your support. It means everything to us. This product would not be possible without your help, and thank you for joining this journey. Thank you for the patience and the continued support. We're really working our asses off to make the best possible products that will challenge the status quo and push forward the innovation. So while the rest of the team is busy on mechanical, electronics, embedded and app engineering, I will show you a first intro of the full version 1.0 menu on the Lit Duo 1. So if you will respond to the survey, or if you will send your feedbacks to this and wishes and comments over the email, those will come to you and I will come back to you with more questions and possible clarifications. So let's go straight into it. In front of you, you've been seeing the Lit Duo 1 as it is. And Lit C1 is basically the same, just stripped down certain functionalities, so we will just focus on this one. And I'll try to be short, but this video will probably be more than half an hour long, so let's run into it. I just want to first explain the high-level architecture, how the information is laid out in the menu. So first, as you see in the top, here we have the status bar. So here you will see the information about which mode is currently open or which sub-mode. You will see whether the Bluetooth is connected, you will see the battery status, the charging, and you will also see which sensor is measuring and when is it measuring. The second part, like this medium portion of the screen, is basically what we call main area, and it's basically the core information and the core things that you can edit within an individual screen. And then at the bottom we have something that we call navigation bar, where you basically move between the individual screens or you make some selections or confirmations. And all of this has been envisioned together with this user interface. Two buttons that we call function buttons and one four-way button that basically does most of the work in the main area, and then of course the measuring button. So our tests with various different end users show that after you use this for one time, it becomes like a second nature to you. So we are very confident that you will be very fast and quick to learn how to navigate around the menu, how to change and adjust the settings, and you will love this interface, even though some people might think it looks childish or it looks I don't know, not professional enough, but it really communicates how it works with clarity and it's easy to use. So one main screen that we have is menu. This is where you choose the modes. Then we have general settings. So that's the second type of the screen that we have. So it's basically where you control the app or where you control the menu settings. For example, when you move up and down and configure your device so it works as you want it to work. The third type of screen is the measuring screen. We have different types of measuring screens, as I will show you, with information on it. And then the fourth type of the screen is the mode options screen, where you can basically configure each individual option. So in total, as you see, we have 4 screens. But let's go straight into the actual menu. Okay, so what I have here in front of me is the actual menu put together in a graphical library in a system that runs on our microprocessor. So what I will show you right here is actually running simulation on the same graphical engine that we are using on device. So all the speed of transitions, all the animations, everything will be exactly the same on the device itself. I'll be using the mouse, and I'm doing this on computer just because it will be easier to show some of the things. But after we receive your feedbacks and after we do an iteration on this, I will do another demo on the device itself. So part of this is already supported on the device itself, and it basically works that we just have to connect the button commands and controls onto this graphical user interface, and we have to connect underlying equations and functions to it. But it's a huge time saver, and it's also a very flexible and future-proof way of work for us to add more functionality. We have a lot of ideas how to make this menu even better, how to add more features, but we want to start simple, and we want to hear your feedbacks. So yeah, my main message is think about this as a beginning. It's really good if you write all of your feedbacks, like which features you can't live without or which features you don't want or need from here, what I'm showing you. But in general, it is a beginning. We see our products as a hardware platform for the software. So it will continue growing and improving together with your feedbacks. Okay, so let's go straight into it. All right. So now I'm running the play mode, which means that this menu is actually running on the same graphical engine that we have on the Lit Duo 1. So as you can see, you can move up and down. You can choose between the different modes. You can do that with the four-way button. And here at the bottom, with the blue button from the main screen, you can access general device settings, basically. So you can see in the general device settings, you have a Bluetooth where you can connect or disconnect it. You have a Bluetooth indicator on the main screen, on the menu. I will show that again later. You have an option to enable or disable continuous measuring. This basically means that if this setting is disabled, you have to press and hold the measure button for the device to measure. But if this is enabled, you click on the measure button once, and the device will start measuring, and it will measure continuously, and then you press it again, and then it will stop measuring. Here is a setting for the device backlight, where you can basically control how bright the display background is. Here you can choose the type of the batteries that you use in your Lit Duo 1. Basically, this mainly affects the how precise the battery indicator is, because different types of batteries, they have a different discharge curves, and they have different starting voltages. And we basically determine, as every device on the planet, we determine the charge status based on the voltage of the battery. There's also one detail. If you choose the nickel metal hydride batteries, then you will be able to enable battery charging also, meaning that when you plug in the USB-C cable to your device, it will start charging the batteries inside. Here at the very bottom of the general settings menu level, we also have feedback and support. You can always read our email address and send us any kind of feedback or questions here. As the menu says, we are happy to help. And then we also have, from the general settings, you can go into the advanced settings. And in the advanced settings, we have a couple of more things that are not so frequently used, but we think might be helpful to tailor the behavior of your device to your needs. This one is basically open last screen, means that when you turn on your lid duo 1, if this is enabled, it will open in the last measuring screen that you used. If it's disabled, it will always open in the menu view. Sounds on off. We have a small buzzer inside, and we have some ideas how to create certain sound feedbacks, either to help you understand if the light is increasing or decreasing, or some warnings and errors, or maybe startup or battery indication. That part, sound design, we will add a little bit later, but nevertheless it is here. Then we have a setting to customize home view, so you can basically hide certain modes if you don't need them. Why would you have to see them on the main screen? You can simply hide them. Then we have auto power off, meaning that device will automatically power off after certain inactivity. And then we have USB mode, which means that if this is set to the flash storage, it means that when you will connect your lid duo 1 to the computer, it will be recognized as a flash storage, and you'll be able to copy paste a firmware update file onto it if you would want to update the firmware that way. The primary way to update the firmware will be via the iOS or Android app, but still we want to give this option to some of you who want to have it as well. And then alternative selection here is command line interface. This is for some of you who are developers or want to control lid duo 1 over the computer, and then also read the readings and use that in your own software applications, for example. Let's go on. Yes, and then here you can trigger the local firmware update. So if you installed the firmware file on your lid duo 1 on the flash storage, you can trigger the installation from here. So for example, just as an illustration how this would work, the device would say, currently you have version 1.2 installed, and the new version would be 1.3. Do you want to install? You click yes, the device goes in the update, and then it says update successful. We also have some error screens in case there would be an issue, and we also have some other error screens designed in case there would be no supported firmware update file when you would trigger this. Then you have two options to tune exposure. So if you would want to tune or calibrate the exposure, we don't want to call this menu option calibrate because the devices will be calibrated, but you're basically tuning this to your taste. So this is a global correction of the exposure metering in tenths of a stop, and this is correction of the Illuminance measurement. Then you also have device info and statistics. We will measure how many we will accumulate or track. The device will track, not us, but the device will track how many measurements have you done, what is the runtime of the product, and how many times have you turned it on. It's just an interesting data for you to see. And last but not least, regulatory info. This is something that we have to have by law. And then very last and also last, factory restore, if you would want to do that. So you see advanced settings, quite a few settings. But then we go back, we are in the general settings, and then we close, and we are back in the menu. Very easy, very simple to navigate. Here at the top you see we have Bluetooth. This is, the icon is shown if the Bluetooth is on. If it's not on, then the icon is not shown. If the Bluetooth is connected, we show it like this. And here we also have battery indicator, and currently it's showing that it's connected to the USB cable and it's charging the battery. If there would be no batteries inside the device, but you would still connect it to the USB cable, this symbol would be like this, because you can run Lid Duo 1 just via the USB-C cable. You don't need to have batteries inserted. And in that case, we would show the icon for the cable. Okay, let's go quickly through the modes. First, we have Illuminance. So you see, once again, we have top bar. Here we show the current mode. Here we show which sensor is measuring. And you see we have two sensors here. Just as on the Lid Duo 1, we have two sensors. This is Lid Duo 1 menu. So now that the second sensor is empty in the middle, it means that it cannot be selected. But when you will press the measure button, the icon will go red. So you will know when are you measuring, and of course the numbers will be changing as well. But this is like additional indicator for you to know when exactly are you measuring. This is very simple. Your primary measurements are Illuminance, and if I open device options, you see it says Illuminance Mode and options. We can choose units, lux or foot candles, and we also have display item, which is basically submenu. If we are on display, we go in, we can decide to show next to our primary unit of interest, which is Illuminance, for example in lux. We can also print out exposure value or color temperature, for example. So here, for example, as on all the screens that I will show you, all of these options are enabled basically. So this could look when you're measuring the lux, and you also enabled showing exposure value and Kelvin, in case you would want to see multiple different measurements at the same time. Let's go back to the menu. Let's go into the Cine Mode. So now in the Cine Mode, you see we have a lot of things shown up, again because all of them are enabled and shown, just to give you an overview what can be shown. So this is the normal measuring screen. You can see we can move around the parameters. We can set ISO, angle, or FPS. You move up and down, or you cycle through these fields with up and down arrows on the four-way control button, and then with left and right you edit the values. It's very easy and very simple. And then again, when you press the measure button, you're measuring. You see here that the secondary sensor here is not blacked out in the middle. This means that it can be selected. So you can use both different sensors in this mode. So let's go to the Cine Mode options. So you see at the top we have two general selections, and those options are stored and saved per each mode. So you can choose between narrow angle and wide angle, and you can basically, it's the same as if you would be using Sekonic and you would rotate and you would retract the dome. You can do this simply with 3 clicks in the menu, and you go between the two sensors because both of them can measure intensity of the light. What we have here also is you can input the offset. If you would want to control some offset in this specific mode, like temporarily, if you would want to, make all measurements show, return or result in a little bit brighter image, for example, or reading, or if you're using ND filters. Again, here for ND filters, currently we only have, you dial in how many stops do you want to compensate for ND filters, but later we will add also different general notations for the filters, ND2, ND4, etc. Here you can also choose the parameter steps, and right now you can choose parameter steps for both ISO and aperture, and later we will decouple that in individual selections for aperture and ISO. Here we also have a first setting for camera type, digital and analog. So basically digital is completely linear regardless of how long your exposure time is, and analog would be kind of a equivalent of a log, certain log correction, and we will expand this with camera profiles basically, or different exposure curves for different brands or different cameras. Yeah, we can get in those details with my next demo. And again, here you can also choose if you want to show illuminance, exposure value, and CCT, for example. So you see here everything is enabled. So here you get the full information, everything possible that you can see on this screen. But all of this can be hidden, and this on the top is basically showing you for how many stops are you compensating, or have you shifted the results with these two settings, offset and ND filter. So if these two would be on 0, this would be on 0. But besides that, it's very simple, it's very straightforward. You just move around, you change the settings, you have a bunch of settings available, and you measure. Now, one more thing I want to show you. Here, you see we have normal measuring function, and I can also switch to exposure difference measuring function. So if I choose the exposure difference measuring function, and if I press OK, or if I close the submenu, then I get into exposure difference measuring screen. So you see here I have my base, and it's using here at the bottom, it's printed out the settings that I used in this screen. You see these 3 settings are shown there, and then I'm basically measuring aperture, and I can measure my base. Let's say I measure a light on a talent, or on one side of the head, or whatever you want to set as a base. And you can see the indicator is here, so you're literally measuring this point. And then you can simply go up, and you can measure the second point, whatever else you want on the set. And on the top, the device will calculate difference in stops between these two. And additionally, what you can do also, when you are positioned on this screen, on this field, you can simply go left and right, and you can choose between 10 different memory places, basically. So you can go to test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4, test 5, test 6. So basically you can just move left or right, and whenever you're measuring, whenever you take a measurement, you will see the difference of that particular point, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 5, compared to the base. And you can just keep adding them, and you can return to one of them, and you can basically just measure again to overwrite it. So this is sort of a memory function done a little bit differently. And these are stored in this mode, and they're stored per individual mode. So basically you can return back to this, and they will still be here. You can still click through them, test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4, test 5, etc. And you can see what were the aperture values, and it will show you the difference to the base. And of course, if you want to change the base, you can go back to the base, and you can simply measure again, and you can set your base or readjust your base. And then if you would go back to here, you know, it would recalculate all of the exposure value differences. Theoretically, on the base, we could make it so that you would be able to manually dial the base. Instead of measuring, that you could say, I want to target f4 for everything, and then I want to set f4 as a base, and then you would go from there. So you see, normal mode and exposure difference mode. Normal mode, you do a simple single measurement. Exposure difference mode, you basically measure two different apertures, and you always see exposure difference between them. And then you can also save multiple of test points. So in this kind of approach, you will see we have in different, in other modes too. Yeah, so that's it. That was the Cine Mode. Let's go back to the menu and let's go to the photo mode. So photo mode, it's very similar to the Cine Mode. Again, we have the exposure compensation indicator here in the top. We have additional information that you might enable or might not displayed here, just so you see the total list of things that you can see on the screen. We have the sensor, the active sensor indicator. We have mode indicator, and you can move between the shutter speed and ISO, and you can adjust them. And again, the settings are very similar to what we saw in the Cine Mode. You can go between wide and narrow angle. You can go to the exposure difference and normal measuring function. So you see here we have base, and again we have test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can simply measure these. What we also have additionally here in the photo/video mode, you can choose the active parameter. So basically, the default one is F. F is the active parameter, or the parameter that we measure, but you can choose also time or ISO, and they would be reshuffled, and you would basically effectively measure time or ISO if you would select something else. The rest of the settings are basically the same, more or less, as in the Cine Mode. But these mode options, they are saved and they exist per individual mode. So if you set camera type digital here, and you set camera type analog in the Cine Mode, they are two separate things. So that's why these are not global settings. These are applicable only to the photo/video mode in this case. And yeah, that's it. Pretty easy and simple for the photo mode. Let's go back to the menu and let's go to the photo flash. Photo flash, very similar to the photo mode, but we also show percentage of the flash. So how many percent did the flashlight contribute to the final exposure in the photograph? And the remaining part is of the ambient light. So flash versus ambient ratio here in this particular photo was 20 to 80. Besides that, it works very similar to the photo mode. The settings are the same. You have normal, you have exposure difference mode. You can choose wide or narrow angle. You can set exposure value offset. You can compensate for ND filters. You can choose the flash type, normal or HSS. Now this is something that we believe we can detect automatically, the flash type, but in the first version of the menu we will do it like this, and then later we will probably add additional option that will be automatic detection or normal and HSS, so you'll be able to choose if you want the device to detect the flash type automatically, or if you want to force it to always anticipate normal type of flash, for example, and then also use equations that are applicable to the normal type of flash to calculate the flash exposure. One thing that we have in the flash mode that we don't have in the photo ambient mode is basically flash analysis. So this is basically how it looks like. Imagine that you press the measure and the device will be basically waiting for the flash to happen. It will detect it, it will print it out, and it will tell you what was the T01, T05 in either seconds or in milliseconds. That's the current first starting point for this submode. And basically, when you will click through this, you will not go like this, but you will basically just very quickly go from this one to this one. So it's basically just in 2 steps. It's not a slider, but it's just click up and down. This is actually the real measurement from the Lid Duo 1. I think it's Profoto A10. So yeah, this will help you to measure and confirm flash duration, flash quality, if there are any issues with how your flash unit is working. And also it might be useful probably with the rise of the global shutter cameras to understand what is the duration of the flash and how to, what kind of shutter time, global shutter time, for example, use on your camera to utilize the flash to the fullest. Yeah, that was flash. Let's go back. Color temperature. Yes. So color temperature again, we have kelvins, we have tint here, and at the bottom we see all of these other settings that are currently shown as enabled, but the default setting will be just showing kelvins and tint. But we added this display option because many of you send us this feedback, basically, either over email or social media, that you want to have text-based information, especially trying to utilize the fact that we have 2 different sensors sitting next to each other. So as you can see here, in theory at the end, you'll be able to measure color temperature, but at the same time, the device can also show you for every measurement, it can also measure lux, it can show you chromaticity coordinates, it can show you the Cine aperture in this case. So it's basically using the settings that are currently set in the Cine mode, and it's just measuring you the aperture, and it's also showing tenths of a stop here, and it's showing you the exposure value. And you can enable or disable each one of these. So let me show you the settings or the options for the color temperature mode. Here you see we have normal measuring mode or filters mode, and I will go to filters immediately. I just want to show you what are other settings or options in this mode. So you can choose different Kelvin units, different color temperature units between Kelvin and Maillard, and you can also choose between different tint units. You can choose color correction index, you can choose DOV, or you can choose fractions, which will basically DOV displayed as fractions, and you can also define fraction base because some cameras or some editing software, they have different fraction base, but essentially they measure the same physical span of the tint or the DOV. So now I want to show you filters. It's a very similar approach than exposure difference, or a similar user experience pattern, as we call it. So here, imagine you can go between the base and the test point. So you measure your base. It's showing just kelvins here, but it also memorizes the possible tint in the background. And you're measuring, you see, okay, this is a small mistake. This one should go red. You measure with the flat sensor, with the color sensor. You cannot use the exposure sensor. And then you go and you measure the test point, and it shows you the kelvins or the CCT here. And then it shows you what filter, how many CTO or CTB or minus green or plus green you have to put on this light, on your test light, in order to match it with the base. And you see here base. You can either measure, or if you would click left or right, you could basically set it manually between roughly 2,500 or 2,400 to 8,000-ish or something like that. And when you would switch to the manually defined, and that would be without any tint, it would be like clean, without any tint shift. This indicator here wouldn't show sensors anymore, but would basically show the arm or the hand, the finger, meaning that this is actually your manually set Kelvin base, and it will be settable in the steps of 100 kelvins, I think. Please give me feedback. Maybe we can make it in steps of 50. And here again, you can move between different test points. You can basically measure multiple different points. You can measure background, foreground, side lights, whatever you want. And you can just, in your head, you can allocate test 1 to a certain area on the screen or on the set, test 2 to a different one, test 3, and they would be stored automatically. And you would just go and you override it by measuring again. And for every light, when you go between them, for every test point, when you go between them, the menu will show you different compensation that you have to apply. Yeah, I think that's it. Luckily, not so many options. And again, we want to start simple and continue building this. It's much better to start simple and add things than start very complex, because it's hard to remove things. Because the more things there are in the menu, the more interdependent they are, and harder it is to clean and simplify. And we are big fans of simple design. Okay, so color temperature. We only have 2 more modes, so bear with me. We have spectrum. So here in the spectrum, again, you see here the indicator works correctly. It's showing us that the flat sensor, because that's the spectral sensor and it's the only sensor that can measure spectra. We measure and then we plot the spectrum. This spectrum is actually measured and reconstructed using one of our earlier prototype sensors. So this is actually LIT Duo 1 early prototype measurement. And you see here we have Illuminate A printed out as a reference, basically. So every time you do a measurement, the device will show you illuminance, it will show you CCT, tint, and then you're able to move down. Again, when you will click down, you will not be moving like this, but you will actually shift from this view to this view immediately. So you will go from here to here. And below you see XY, you see CRI, and you see SSI and the base that is used to calculate the SSI. And then if we go to the last step at the bottom, again we show some additionally enabled display options here. This is still debatable, work in progress, but as a suggestion, I put here flickering frequency and the power percentage for the flickering frequency, and aperture and exposure value. So, but we'll see. That's something that's very easy to change to give you the options that you want to have. So yeah, the calibration method for the spectral sensor is not it's not finalized yet. We have two possible options. We see two possible options, and we need to do more testing to nail that down. But it looks like we'll be able to reconstruct the spectrum in a pretty robust way that will be able to be comparable with dedicated spectrometer for this use cases. Let's see what kind of settings do we have here in the spectrum mode. You can choose the units in which the luminance will be shown on the main screen, units for the CCT, units for the tint, the same selections or the same options as in the color temperature mode. And then here you can choose between SSI reference. Here's a typo. So right now we just have some standard reference curves to choose from. And later, I mean, we can add more. Later it's possible to do it in a way that you can measure your own and add it to the library here below. That's not such a big complex thing to do. It just takes time. And we really need to be, we need to focus and prioritize basically features at this point. It will be a lot of work to polish all of this anyways. And then here's also a setting to plot the reference. So it's enabled. That's why this curve is shown here. And every measurement is just scaled to the same height. So you just get like a general impression of the curve. And here we just print out 380 to 780 nanometers. That's the range of the spectral measurement. And here at the bottom, again, display. So the things that I showed before, flicker, cine aperture, and exposure value. Those were these ones here at the bottom. Okay, let's go back to the menu. So now we are left with flicker. Let's go to the flicker. Flicker is very simple, at least for now. Here you see the dome, the sensor, the photodiode is measuring flicker. The spectral sensor cannot measure it because it's not fast enough. And this is actually flicker measured with Lit Duo 1 prototype. This is extremely fast flicker. You see the detected flickering frequency is 44.44 kilohertz. And this is actually measurement of the HSI or HSS pulse of the flash. And basically how this mode will work is you will do a measurement, you will take a measurement, you'll do a reading, the device will print out the portion of the curve, and it will do the Fourier analysis in the background, and it will show you up to 3 detected flickering frequencies. Sometimes some lights, they might have multiple different frequencies. Sometimes lights flicker by themselves due to PWM, for example, because that's how they control the intensity. And they also can show or exhibit some flickering that gets propagated from the mains, let's say 50 hertz or 60 hertz. So if there will be more than one frequency detected, the device will print out F1, F2, F3. Usually more than 3, it's basically impossible to get. The percentage here is basically the power. So how big portion of the light power was flickering. So here basically 95% of the light was DC, was basically fixed, and only 5% was zigzagging at the top. And in this mode you'll be able to go down and it will show you the maximum illuminance level, the average illuminance level, and the minimum illuminance level. And it will show you for how many stops up and down has been the light flickering. There will be a third step here for the flickering mode, but it's not done yet. And that one will basically show you which FPS and which shutter angle combinations or multiplies of them should you avoid to reduce the risk of artifacts, rolling artifacts on the footage, basically. That is coming. We have to do some more research. There are a couple of very good articles and literature. We've been working on that, but it's not done yet, but it will be done sooner or later. Yeah, let's go back. I think that's it. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you once again for your support and patience and believing in us. It is very exciting, and we look forward to deliver the light meters to you. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your January.